All right, in this video we're going to talk about returns to education in a different way. Okay, and so there's something called the age earnings profile of full-time workers. And this shows how much these workers are earning at different age groups, okay, and also for different education groups. And so we're going to start by looking at 1974, and then we're going to compare to 2015. So let's first take a look at 1974. So what do we see in 1974? First of all, we see for men, this curve is super steep and really high. This is for 4 years of college, men with 4 years of college. Super steep and really high. In the peak of their earnings, in 1974, men were earning, the average man was earning a little bit over $90,000 in today's dollars. Okay? So in the peak of their earnings, and they started, fairly low. Right out of school, they're starting in the 40s. This again, there wasn't 40s in 1974, but it's equivalent when you adjust for inflation, and then rising quickly until the middle of people's careers. For men with high school, they were starting lower and rising, but not quite as much. Okay, so there was quite a big gap. We can draw this. There's quite a big gap for education. So getting more education definitely was valuable even back then. But the surprising thing that we find is that for women, even women with college educations here, their wages were lower even than men with high school education. Okay, this is surprising. This is quite stark. Now, one of the things that we should keep in mind here, it's not always that we're comparing things directly in a very close way. So, for example, here, yes, they had the same age, but it's very likely, given the much lower labor force participation, that women in the equivalent age had a significantly less experience going on. Also, from what we saw earlier, they were not, even though they both had 4 years of college, they were not necessarily the same major. And the majors that women were choosing were significantly less lucrative than the majors men were choosing. But still, it's quite shocking to see that the average woman with college was making significantly less, in fact, almost $15,000 less than the average man with just high school. And we can also see the gain from education for women was not as big as for men. Their earnings went up, but the earning difference was not quite as big, both in absolute terms and also as a percentage, it was not quite as big. So let's fast forward, 2014, sorry. So a couple of things have happened. First, for women with high school, not much has changed. The beginning has fallen a little bit. The later part has gone up a little bit. Not much has changed. For men with high school, there's a big change. So this is much lower. Men with high school are making much less than they did before. This one, especially in the middle, we might say is just a little more. So now the gap between the gap between men and women with high school used to be huge, and it's still there, but it's much smaller than before. Okay, so this gap is getting smaller. Then a few other things. Men with college. The college-educated person for men is about the same age earnings profile as they had back in the 1970s. There's a slight increase in the middle, and there's a slight shift up, but very slight. So it's basically almost the same. So this is a small increase. We got a small increase. I'm not sure if you can read that, but I said small increase. Okay. Now for women, here's where the big change happened. For women, much higher than before. They're doing better than, so the peak of the career, people are hitting around 65,000. Again, it's not nearly the same as the men's, but again, we have some mitigating factors of experience, although decreasingly so, and choice of field or major. But still, there's still this big gap. Okay, big gap, but the gap is much smaller than it was before. And the gain from education is quite large for women now. So the wages, so this went up a lot. We can say this went up a lot. Okay, so it kind of depends if you see things glass half full or glass half empty. On the positive side, you can say that the gains for women were big, especially for college educated women. But at the same time, you can say the gap is still pretty large. they're still pretty far behind. Again, it's hard to quantify exactly how much of this is this, but part of this difference is choice of major. A little bit of the difference is experience, but there's lots of other things going on here. Okay, so we're going to kind of be looking at this more and more over time. So the first thing we can ask ourselves is, why does it have this shape? Why is it like that? Okay, and so one is we expect earnings to increase with age. So this increase with age, that indicates that your experience has value. But we also expect it to get flatter, not to be like this or like this. We expect it to get flatter. Flatter means two things. One is that you learn the most at the beginning. The early experience is the most important. And this kind of makes sense. You go into a certain like, let's suppose you're a new teacher and you go into your classroom, and the first year or two you're gonna have tons to learn. But then if you've been doing it for 20 years, hopefully you're still learning, but the amount of new things you're learning each year are significantly less than they were at the beginning, right? So the most important skills are probably going to be learned at the beginning. Also, your skills depreciate over time, so you have to reinvest. So when you're first starting out, lots of the skills you're learning for the first time, and after you have lots and lots of skills, then lots of your work is just to maintain those skills rather than to learn new ones. Okay, so you get the idea. And some jobs will be steeper than others. So jobs that involve training and jobs that maybe involve a lot of growth, especially reaching up to upper levels of management, or where there's a tremendous amount of growth in over somebody's career life, those jobs will tend to be steeper. Jobs that have less training and less ability to build skills will tend to be flatter. Okay, so this is some of the other ideas. Now, there's two ideas about this. One of them is that the fact that you're getting more skills makes your wage grow, and the other is the employer wants to keep you, and so they're going to give you pay raises in the future to keep you, right? And so that then makes your profile end up pretty big. Now I want to look at